We have taken a lot of big initiatives and a lot of big moves in the last couple of years. We have attacked the Orange State. Whatever we think about policing them, we all think different things. The RUC are destroyed. The Orange Order are in their backs. The damn throws that they have are going year by year by year. The civil service is under assault from us. The Southern State is collapsing, it's falling apart.
Well, hello and welcome again. Welcome to Restore UK Live. Going out to the Restore channel on Facebook, to the British Unionist People's Voice, to the YouTube channel, that's Restore UK, and also to the Twitter channel. Now, if you would like to just let me know that the sound is working now. I honestly don't know what happened in the past stream that we tried to do, but however, we're here this evening to talk about terrorists, missing money, and collusion. Collusion isn't an illusion. And whenever that we would hear about collusion in the in the media, they often say that there was British state collusion, and that would have been between, say, the security services and the loyalists and the security services, but never any mention of collusion with IRA terrorists, unrepentant IRA terrorists, I may add. So what I would like for you to do, just so that we can get this stream started, would be, could you share this stream? Could you tag people into the live chat if you're on the Restore UK on Facebook, if you're on the British Unionist People's Voice on Facebook, if you would like to just share this channel out far and wide, in order that what we can do this evening is that we can attract as many people as humanly possible to see what it is that we're here to show this evening. Now, we're going to have to do things slightly different in that we started this broadcast. We had everything lined up. We had to close our screen, so we lost everything that we had been preparing for the past few hours. However, we're I'm going to say professional enough to gain everything back and to ensure that people get to understand why it is that we're here this evening, and how that it is that I would suggest, and this is me personally from my own personal opinion, that there is collusion. There's collusion between IRA terrorists, unrepentant IRA terrorists, some of the most gruesome murderers that the world has ever seen. There is collusion between these terrorists and, well, let's just say the PSNI. Let's just say the law enforcement here in Northern Ireland. And, I can stand with my hand in my heart and say that there is collusion. Who remembers the Bobby Story funeral? Who remembers the head of communications within the PSNI? It was a man called Ryan Feeney, from my recollection. Let's just go and have a look and see if we can find Ryan. Yes, here's a little picture here. So former GAA official Ryan Feeney set to quit his post within the PSNI. So Ryan Feeney is set to leave his post within the PSNI. And we'll just go to the next clip. And we'll look at the next clip. Former senior GAA official Ryan Feeney is set to leave his job as head of the PSNI press office. Mr. Feeney, 41, who had served the role of Director of Strategic Communications, that was within the PSNI. And who remembers the Bobby Story funeral? Whenever according to Sam McBride, a trusted journalist here in Northern Ireland, a man that gets much airtime and who is promoted as a trusted journalist, well, didn't he say that what was happening between the communications office in the PSNI and the people who were organizing Bobby Story's funeral was that they were suggesting between each other that there should be a consistent messaging whenever that there was a huge cortege at the Bobby Story funeral, whenever no one in this country, in Northern Ireland, right around the United Kingdom, even in Ireland, those people, there were people that couldn't bury their loved ones, but Bobby Story was afforded a British state funeral. And it just so happened that this man, he was in charge of the PSNI, and he was the head of communications. And it just so turned out that the Bobby Story funeral, well, it left from a GAA pitch known as Casement Park. And well, one can only look at this and one can only understand that whenever Ryan Finney would have left his job, well, was Ryan Finney the man who left his role because of this, I'm going to say, collusion? Now, that is my claim as a person. And if anyone wants any evidence of what it is that I say, well, I'm happy to provide the evidence, which we have here, which will show that. And in fact, we'll pop up another picture before we move on. And we're here to talk about terrorists, missing money, and collusion. And there was a report in our press just last week, which actually prompted us to go and to do a wee bit of digging and to try to scratch the surface and try to understand why that it is that terrorists are still involved in pocketing money, public money. Why that it is that a specific brand of terrorists would be pocketing public money, and why that it is that there is collusion between the security services, seemingly, and these IRA terrorists, some of the most gruesome murderers that the world has ever seen. So collusion, by no means, it's not an illusion. And, well, we can't actually level that collusion charge at the British state, as the IRA would often do. And let's just say the security services or the loyalists. So tonight, strap yourself in, tag people into the live chat. Let's try to get as many people here as humanly possible before that it is that we unfold what it is that we're here to do. So looking for one more picture, and then we'll move on with our broadcast. So if you bear with me, and you've got to excuse me, is because that what we did, we had everything set up, ready to go, and we had a problem with our IT. Let's just say, for goodness knows whatever reason. But what we did is that we switched to another system. We switched. Well, let's not give too much away, but we switched. The other system, it doesn't matter whether it's working or not. We're not going to be left that we can't broadcast whenever that it is that we need to broadcast. So welcome here. As I say, invite people here to this channel. And the name of this channel, the name of this stream, and we're ready to start, is Terrorists, Missing Money, and Collusion, let's just say. So let's find a little picture that we can superimpose over what it is that we're doing this evening, in order that what I can do is that I can begin to narrate from some media reports in the past week, which actually prompted us at Restore UK to go and do some digging for ourselves and to find out and to scratch the surface and to understand, well, what is it that's happening, and why is it that seemingly that some people are going to great lengths, and I'm talking about PSNI sources, some people are going to great lengths in order to cover up, I'm going to just say, the unpalatable. So I'll pop this picture up here. I think this is a good picture to pop up. And looking, this is from the newsletter, and it says that the IRA is armed and still gathering intelligence on opponents, says leaked MI5 PSNI assessment. So starting off by reading something, I'm just getting my bearings here in terms of the report that I have to read from. So the officer at a restorative justice group lifted over an alleged burglary is fingerprinted and stripped before cops say sorry and let her go without asking any questions. So again, just to clarify, that there was an officer at the restorative justice group, that was the Community Restorative Justice Ireland group, based on the Andersonstown Road. Well, this person from within that office was arrested by the PSNI. She was fingerprinted and she was stripped before cops said sorry and let her go without asking any questions. Now that is something, a headline which would encourage anyone to go and look and to understand, well, why was it that this happened? So let's just read from the report that was in the media. Now, just last week on the mainstream media, on the BBC, there was an announcement that the Community Restorative Justice, which has people from the IRA, let's just say, there was one man that was to do with the Community Restorative Justice on the Andersonstown Road. In fact, he was a director of that group. One Harry Maguire. Now, who remembers Harry Maguire? Harry Maguire was a man that was convicted of the murders of the two corporals. They were the two corporals in the late 1970s, was it? Or the late 1980s, in where that these two corporals, they drove into an IRA funeral. And when they did, their car was surrounded. It was hemmed in by black taxis. The two corporals, they were set upon by the mourners at the funeral, and they were taken to Casement Park. They were stripped, they were beaten, and they were shot. Now, a man that was involved in the Community Restorative Justice Group was a man, one Harry Maguire, a notorious, infamous type person who was involved in this Community Restorative Justice. Now, let me just give you my take on what Community Restorative Justice actually is. And again, this is my own opinion, is that this was a mechanism to allow the terrorists to police their own areas. Now, again, this is what I state. This is how I see things. And I have a great deal of evidence. We've talked about this before. We have seen how on the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, we have seen just last year how that the PSNI, based on a report provided by the Community Restorative Justice Ireland Limited, well, they took the report of a sample poll from within the Crossmaglen and surrounding area that was presented to them, the PSNI, by Community Restorative Justice Ireland, and they took the findings of that report, and the PSNI then pushed forward and they seek to implement the recommendations contained within that report. Now, last year, whenever that we done the stream about the Community Restorative Justice, the PSNI, and how that it was that the PSNI, unbeknown to people, ordinary people here in Northern Ireland, they were considering amalgamating with the An Garda Síochána in and around the border area to police jointly the border area. And then they were closing down just last year the Crossmaglen police station. And didn't we, in the surfaces that we scratched back then, whenever this happened, didn't we find that there was Doug Beattie from the Ulster Unionist Party? Didn't we find that Mike Nesbitt from the Ulster Unionist Party and another councillor from the Ulster Unionist Party on Muri and on Mourne District Council? Well, they seemed to be selling this approach in where that the PSNI could amalgamate with the An Garda Síochána in and around the border area. Now, whenever that we looked at this, whenever we noticed and witnessed and looked at the report from the Community Restorative Justice Ireland and the recommendations that they were making that should happen, well, what was in that report was that, the people that would have lost their lives from the RUC, if they had any memorials in and around that area, well, those memorials were to be taken off the streets. They were to be put in back offices and back rooms, hidden from public view. The police stations would have had Irish language put onto them to make them more acceptable to Community Restorative Justice. And remember, people, let's not make any bones about this. This was an organisation that was run by terrorists. And effectively, whenever you scratch the surface, just last year, this is just a bit of context, the terrorists were being provided carte blanche to completely police their own areas. Now, not only is that unacceptable in a stable society, but whenever you look at it, and I feel for the ordinary nationalist and community from that area, effectively what you had was you had the wrongdoer, the terrorist, the criminal. And believe me, there's a lot of criminality in that area. You had the criminal that was put in charge of the policing service. And, tell me that that's right in any modern society. However, that happened last year. The Ulster Unionist Party, they were promoting that this should happen. And well, everything went quiet and things moved on. And now we're here to update on the stream that we did last year with reference community restorative justice. And we're here to tell you what has happened in the past week within this particular organization. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to pop this up on the screen and we're going to read from some newspaper reports of last week. Now, it is understood that the officer, before that she left the police station, remember there was an officer at restorative justice that was arrested over an alleged burglary, and she was fingerprinted and stripped before cops said sorry and let her go without any questioning. So it is understood that before she left the police station, an officer apologized for any perceived humiliating treatment she may have endured. Community groups in Belfast were stunned this week when it emerged that the Charity Commission was looking into the issues surrounding the alleged financial irregularities of Community Restorative Justice Ireland. And the Executive Office at Stormont also announced it had pulled funding from the organisation after irregularities were reported to it last month. Now, again, last year, the Department for Justice financed the Community Restorative Justice Ireland to the tune of 1.2 million. Since it was established in 1998, the time of the Good Friday Agreement, Community Restorative Justice Ireland has built a reputation for mediating in community disputes in areas where previously illegally paramilitary law held sway. It enjoyed the full support of the police, and its board included many well-known legal figures and members of the clergy. It was originally designed to eradicate a practice of so-called punishment attacks in Republican areas of West Belfast. So again, I'm just reading through this report now. CRJI, Community Restorative Justice Ireland, currently employs around 35 members of staff in 6 branches across Belfast and in other offices in Derry and Newry. It prides itself in providing gold standard restorative justice and other related services. In a statement related to the press this week, the PSNI said it was made aware of alleged financial irregularities at CRJI, Community Restorative Justice Ireland, last month. Community Restorative Justice Ireland was originally headed by former Republican prisoner Harry Maguire. That was the man who was convicted of murdering the 2 corporals, and he had a high-placed position as director of Community Restorative Justice Ireland. So CRJ was originally headed by former Republican prisoner Harry Maguire, but he stood down. Now, this is very important. He stood down after undergoing a major heart surgery. It is understood he has been retained in a consultancy capacity. It is understood Maguire's former post has been filled in by a co-director, Jim McCarthy. And again, I'm asking people to remember this name, Jim McCarthy, who is now described as the organization's chief executive officer. Another former Republican prisoner, McCarthy, so again, we're understanding that McCarthy was an IRA prisoner. He holds a unique distinction of having received a public apology from the IRA after a Republican gunman shot him 6 times. Now, remember this, what I'm saying, what we're reading here. So it says another former Republican prisoner, McCarthy, he's now the head of the CRJ, the Community Restorative Justice Ireland. He holds a unique distinction of having received a public apology from the IRA after a Republican gunman shot him 6 times. Yesterday, Harry Maguire told the press he wasn't going to comment as an investigation was already underway. He says, anything I say may be prejudicial at this stage, he said, but following the recent funding storm over high-profile board members have resigned from the organization. So over these irregularities that are suggested to have happened, what we have now is a PSNI chief inspector, Peter Brannigan, he quit his post within this organization just last Friday. And then Robert Topping, a professor of law at Queen's University, had tendered his resignation last month. And it says here, on the Community Restorative Justice Ireland chairman, uh, Michael O'Hara insisted to the group he had referred himself to the stakeholders and was willing to cooperate with any external investigations. In a statement issued earlier this week, he said it would be inappropriate to comment further while the internal investigation was going on. Now, what actually seems to have happened whenever that we're reading from this report and whenever that we listened to the press just last week, whenever they reported that the executive office, now who's the executive office? The executive office is formerly known as the Office of First Minister and Deputy First Minister, and that office is joint, and it is held right now, notwithstanding that the DUP are not in Stormont, quote unquote, but that office is jointly held by Michelle O'Neill and, well, either Jeffrey Donaldson or Emma Pengelly. So, they have withdrawn their funding from this group because of financial irregularities. Now, I still haven't heard any of our representatives, let's just say from the unionist community, talk about this case. So this is why we felt the need to scratch this surface and to try to talk about it and to try to make some sense of why that it is that the Executive Office would have jointly removed funding from Community Restorative Justice Ireland, in where that Harry Maguire, the murderer of the two corporals, a man that was actually charged and convicted of this murder, a man that had a very lucrative position within this organisation. We know that he run this organisation, and now there has been funding withdrawn pending investigations, and so much so that even the PSNI representative to this organisation, well, they have resigned. And you could only imagine why that may have happened. Is this damage limitation by the PSNI? Well, let's try to scratch the surface and try to understand exactly what has happened here. And we'll move on and we'll try to make our own determination as to why so many people have left this organisation because of financial irregularities. So remember that we said that there was a lady that was arrested by the PSNI. She was taken, she was fingerprinted, she was accused, and it was an accusation of being involved in a break-in at the Office of Community Restorative Justice Ireland on the Andersonstown Road. Now, let's just understand who this person was. Her elder sister. Now, again, I'll pop this up as I read this. It says this lady that was arrested, her elder sister, Teresa, was the long-term partner of former IRA man and later senior Sinn Féin spokesperson, Bobby Storey, who died 2 years ago after an illness. Catherine Pickering has worked as a finance officer for the Community Restorative Justice Ireland in Belfast for more than 2 decades. She is currently suspended on full pay pending the outcome of a disciplinary procedure. Mrs. Pickering is also in the process of taking a compensation case against her employers, alleging the ongoing investigation are unwarranted, unnecessary, and wholly inappropriate. So documents supporting Mrs. Pickering claim were lodged with the Secretary of the Industrial Tribunals and Fair Employment Tribunal and its Belfast office on the July the 5th, just this year. These papers include full details of her arrest and her detention by the PSNI officers. It is expected the case will call before an industrial tribunal court in Belfast in the near future. Now, follow this very, very carefully, people. If you're interested in corruption, if you're interested in terrorists, if you're interested in missing money, I should have said unrepentant terrorists, and if you're interested in what I would suggest is collusion is not an illusion. So it is expected the case will fall before the Industrial Tribunal Court in Belfast in the near future. right? We have been told that in March of this year, Catherine Pickering raised concerns about a number of financial transactions at CRJI, that's Community Restorative Justice Ireland, which she alleges were authorised by senior members of the organisation. It is understood that Mrs. Pickering informed management that she was unable to process the transactions without appropriate receipts. It is also understood that Mrs. Pickering's concerns were connected to a financial package being prepared for a member of staff who was stepping down. Now, at this point, I'm going to ask people to cast your mind back to what we had been talking about just earlier on. Now, this is a question. This is a question. This is all this is. This is a real question. You know, did we not hear that Harry Maguire, the murderer of the corporals, the two corporals, the man that was charged and convicted of that gruesome murder, in where two corporals were hemmed in, they were taken from their cars, they were stripped, they were beaten, then they were shot, and they were left lying beside Casement Park on the Andersonstown Road. Now, didn't we hear in what we had just been discussing that Harry Maguire, he had stepped down from this organisation over a heart attack or heart problems? And then we read within this report, and this is me just using my absolute right to question what is going on at this organisation whenever you have PSNI officers stepping down that was involved in this, whenever you have the executive office withdrawing funding from this organisation. Now let me read again, and I'm asking people to make up their own minds as to what exactly is happening at this organisation. So Pickering's claims were lodged with the Secretary of the Industrial Tribunals. In fact, these papers right here we go. It is expected the case will call. We have been told that in March of this year, here we go again, Catherine Pickering raised concerns about a number of financial transactions at CRJI, which she alleges were authorised by senior members of the organisation. It is understood Mrs. Pickering informed her management she was able to process these transactions. It is also understood that Mrs. Pickering's concerns were connected to a financial package that being prepared for a member of staff who was stepping down, but Mrs. Pickering suddenly found herself, and this is important, the subject of a disciplinary proceeding from within this organisation over allegations that she had failed to pay an employee some back pay. And after taking legal advice, she instigated industrial tribunal proceedings against her employer. But shortly afterwards, Mrs. Pickering was arrested by the PSNI on what appeared to be a trumped-up burglary allegation. Mrs. Pickering told the press she was apprehended by police, and when they called at her Navan Green home in West Belfast on June the 29th, officers informed her, the CIJ employee, she was being detained over an allegation of burglary at her place of work. She was placed in the rear of a police car and driven to the custody suite at Musgrave Police Station in Belfast city centre. Before being shown to a holding cell, she was fingerprinted. There was DNA, saliva swabs were taken from the inside of her mouth. Mrs. Pickering's claims that she was then ordered to undress down to her bra and her pants before being strip searched and photographed. She was handed a grey tracksuit and asked to wear it during an interview. Two female detectives arrived soon afterwards, intending to question her over allegations of burglary at the CRJI offices at 105 Andersonstown Road. But before the interview got underway, the custody sergeant was contacted by Mrs. Pickering's legal representative, who informed him that Mrs. Pickering was, in fact, a whistleblower who had been blowing the whistle over financial irregularities at the Community Restorative Justice Ireland on the Andersonstown Road. So really, she had privileged status under the law. Mrs. Pickering's legal team also informed the officer it was illegal for the police to be interviewing their client under these circumstances, and they demanded her immediate release. And shortly after 5:30 p.m., The same day, Mrs. Pickering was told she was free to leave police custody without a single question or an allegation being put towards her. So you see, what we're looking at here, people, is we're looking at a whistleblower who had connections to Bobby Story, who had been involved in the Community Restorative Justice Ireland on the Andersonstown Road, who was asked to pay out some money to a member of staff who was leaving, seemingly. What will we call this? Well, we call this like a financial package to someone, like a payoff, like a severance pay, whatever it is that we want to call it. And this lady, being the financial controller of that office, well, she says, well, I can't do this. There's no way in which I can do this. And then that lady found herself subjected to being arrested by the PSNI, being taken into police custody, being strip searched, being humiliated, being made stripped down, being made put on a grey tracksuit before being released on the basis that this lady had been with her solicitor, and this lady was whistleblowing on inappropriate financial transactions from within the Community Restorative Justice Ireland group on the Andersonstown Road in Belfast. Now, we're speculating whenever that we try to understand, and this is what we're reading from the raw press, so that we can say this, because this is what's in the press. But we are speculating as to who that the money was actually going to. But in that press statement that we just read there, it says that Harry Maguire, the man who killed the two corporals, who was convicted of killing those two corporals, who was convicted of one of the most heinous crimes that Northern Ireland has ever seen. And I mean that Northern Ireland has ever seen a barbarous attack in where those two corporals were taken from their car, were driven in a taxi, were taken to Casement Park, were stripped, were beaten, and were shot to death by these terrorists. And here we have, in 2022, the man that was convicted of that being absolutely entrusted to be in charge of the policing service in the Greater Belfast area. In fact, on a wider catchment area, if he is a director of the Community Restorative Justice Ireland. And here we have, and no matter whether it was Harry Maguire that was receiving these payments or not, here we have the circumstances in where under his watch, the person that would have said who was in charge of the financial transactions from within this group, under his watch as head of this organization, here we have this lady being arrested, being accused of burglary, being literally humiliated by the PSNI. And one can only speculate as to the reasons why the PSNI would have done this. Was this a claim from within this office that this lady had stolen something from within the office? Remember, this lady was a whistleblower. Was this a counter, thrust or push at this lady because that she was exposing corruption from within this office? Well, we'll watch the case and we'll try to understand why that it was that this would happen. Now, this is where it really, really gets interesting. Reading in the report, we now understand that there's a man called Jim McCarthy who's involved in the running. He's now got Harry Maguire's job in Andersonstown, the Andersonstown office, Community Restorative Justice Ireland. Now, I want to ask people to go back, and I want to ask people to look at the meme that we made for the start of this screen. And because that we've had to restart the screen because of problems with IT at the start, we don't actually have this picture here that we can show you. But just last year, there was a time frame whenever the now Chief Constable and his deputy, well, on the anniversary of the murder of those two corporals that were hemmed in, that were driven in a black taxi to the Casement Park area, who were stripped, who were beaten, and who were shot to death, and who Harry Maguire, who he was charged for those murders. Now, on the anniversary of their death, we learned just last year that the chief constable, the now chief constable of the PSNI, there was a really insensitive Zoom meeting that took place on the day of the anniversary of those corporals' deaths, in where that the PSNI were having a meeting with this man called Harry Maguire and another man called Spike Murray, from my recollection. And now, the insensitive thing that happened on that day just last year was that how insensitive was it for our police constable, our chief constable, to be holding a meeting with these people on the day of the death of those two corporals? How holding a meeting with someone who had caused these victims to be victims? How do you feel that? How do you think that their families felt that we have now the law enforcement liaison with these people on the day of the anniversary of those corporals' deaths? Now, it goes even further than that, because we're now going to have a look and see who that this man that is now in charge of this organization actually is. And let's look at his pedigree and let's see what he was accused of. And well, I'm going to ask people to try to understand for themselves uh, what it is that's happening here. Um, is this corruption? Is this corruption at its finest? Is this the absolute corruption of our law enforcement, whenever that our law enforcement will work along with these people? Have they given up their corruption? Have they given up their criminality? Well, seemingly not, according to this whistleblower. Seemingly, there was irregularities within financial transactions within this organisation, Community Restorative Justice Ireland. So much so, remember this, that the PSNI representative in Community Restorative Justice Ireland, well, he resigned just last Friday, and the executive office, they are now withholding funding from this group. So that is a general picture of what it is that has been happening behind closed doors in the past few weeks. And now what we want to do is that we want now to look at this organization and try to understand who that it is that's involved in this organization today. So let's have a look at some video clips, and let's try to understand who that it is that is in charge of policing in their own areas. So what I want to do is I want to actually share my screen, and I want to have a look at a newspaper clipping from quite a few years ago. And I want now to read from this clipping. We're going to share this on the screen, and we're going to try to understand who that it is that is now involved at the head of this actual group. So popping this up onto your screen, here we go. Right, just bear with me for a second. And what I want to do is I want to just enhance this as much as I can, if you just bear with me. You've got to forgive me, people, for the lack of professionalism here. Is that we had all this prepared, ready to go, and now we don't have it prepared and ready to go. We just have to sort of go back over what it is that we were trying to do. So here we go. Okay, so I know two provosts. I know two provosts were RUC informers at what it says on this Sunday Life article from a few years ago. And let's just flip on down. Now, this is by Kathy Johnston. It was on July the 12th of 2008, which was, well, quite a few years ago. So it says here, former Special Branch Agent Martin McGartland believes that two members of the IRA's internal security unit were recruited as police informers after being secretly observed as they abducted Martin McGartland in August in 1991. Now, here's the name. Jim Boot McCarthy and Paul Chico Hamilton angrily denied being RUC informers last week after the PSNI contacted both men to warn them that they were about to be outed as police informers. So we're going to focus on this name right now, Jim McCarthy. Now, that was the name that we seen in the press, who has now taken over the Community Restorative Justice Ireland, and he now replaces the Harry Maguire fella that was the murderer of the two corporals, who was convicted and incarcerated for the murder of those two corporals. So we now have a man called Jim McCarthy, and here we have a press report in where that Martin McGartland believes that the two members of the IRA's internal security unit were recruited as police informers after being secretly observed as they abducted him in August 1981. And I want to draw your attention to the fact that these two people were secretly observed as they abducted Martin McGartland in 1991. And remember this name, Jim McCarthy. So McGartland, who was forced to leave Northern Ireland after being unmasked as a police agent, said yesterday, "I believe that McCarthy and Hamilton were recruited as informers. I have no problem with that, and in fact, I would congratulate them, but I want to know why they were never prosecuted for abducting me. They were caught in film, and I wanted to give evidence against them in court. Indeed, I would still give evidence today." He added, "I have already lodged a complaint with the PSNI. I am writing to Al Hutchison, the police ombudsman, to ask him to investigate." Hamilton was nicknamed Budgie after he sang to the RUC when they arrested him in 1977 for the attempted murder of Major Gordon Highlanders. He was later sentenced to 12 years imprisonment. McCarthy, 51, now the West Belfast coordinator, the West Belfast coordinator for Community Restorative Justice, is known as Boot after he squeaky booted the term given to conforming IRA prisoners who wore prison uniforms and refused to join the blanket protests. So McCarthy, the man who is now actually in charge of the Community Restorative Justice Ireland on the Andersonstown Road, and in fact, in a wider scale. McCarthy, who was in prison, who was a prison orderly, received an IRA punishment shooting for taking the side of the authorities. When he was released from prison, he received a five-year sentence in 1976 for possession of firearms. Excuse me. So McCarthy, whilst in prison at the time of the dirty protests, he was a prison orderly. He refused to conform with the dirty protesters. He wore a prison uniform. So he received an IRA punishment shooting for taking the side of the authorities when he was released from prison. He received a 5-year sentence in 1976 for possession of firearms. Now, it is suggested, and I'm going to use these words suggested, that at the time that McCarthy, whenever he was an orderly, that he helped hose down the rooms and the people that were taking part in the dirty protests. He went completely against the IRA. He went against the people who were taking part in the dirty protests. And, it is suggested that he was shot for whenever he got out for taking the side of the authorities when he was released from prison. So McCarthy was the subject of a BBC Radio 4 programme last week where he was broadcast discussing the details of crime in West Belfast with a PSNI officer. A photograph of him alongside a mural of dead hunger striker Bobby Sands appeared in a BBC website. So I'm just reading on down here. I'm looking for relevant points as I go. So, right. So these are very, very, you see, there's security. McGartland claims that the abduction was under covert surveillance by the RUC. They were corroborated. So McGartland's claims were corroborated by Detective Superintendent Ian Phoenix, who was in charge of the operation and who later died in the Chinook helicopter crash in June in 1994. In Phoenix, Policing in the Shadows, that was a book compiled from Ian Phoenix's diaries and serialized in Sunday Leaf. Phoenix confirmed that Martin McGartland's account of this man McCarthy kidnapping him. Well, Mr. Phoenix, in his book, he claimed that Martin McGartland was telling the truth and that this man McCarthy was actually filmed, videoed, kidnapping Martin McGartland from Connolly House along with another man. Now, I wanted you to understand who that it is that is in charge of Community Restorative Justice Ireland. And I wanted to understand that Martin McGartland's claims was corroborated in the Ian Phoenix's book, taken from his diaries, and they were published quite a few years ago. So what I'm doing now, people, is that I am taking this from our screen. And what I want to do is I want to come back in again. Please accept my apologies for doing this. Now, follow this, and follow this to its end, because there's a lot more to come, and there's a lot more that has to be said with reference. What is it that is happening that these type of people? Now, remember what McGartland said. McGartland said that this man, McCarthy, who's now in charge of Community Restorative Justice Ireland, well, he has never been charged for kidnapping Martin McGartland. He has never been charged, even although that it is contained within Ian Phoenix's book, taken from Ian Phoenix's diaries, that this man McCarthy, he was filmed abducting Martin McGartland, who was an IRA informer. Now remember this, and then ask yourself a question. Who is it that the PSNI are associating with? In fact, who's controlling the people that they're associating with? And that's just a question. That is a real question. Let's play a couple of video clips that should be played on this screen. And we're going to share some video clips. We had them all ready, prepared, but we had IT problems. So we're going to go from scratch. So bear with me as we look for the video clips that we're actually looking for here. So here we go. What I want to do is that I want to show you a clip from Mr. McCarthy's mother making a plea for his return whenever his IRA kidnappers actually kidnapped him. Now, let me just say, remember that we said that Mr. McCarthy, whenever he got out of the Maze prison, the IRA shot him 6 times. It was later in a report that, well, they apologized for shooting him 6 times, but the reasons being, and we've just read, is that he did not conform with the dirty protesters. And in fact, it is suggested that what he was doing was that he was on the side of the authorities and he was hosing down the rooms and the dirty protesters whilst that they were taking part in their dirty protests. So he was subsequently released from jail after a 6-year sentence, whatever the time that he spent for that 6-year sentence. And then after that, yet again, he was abducted, kidnapped by the IRA, suspected of being an informer. So let's now just understand the pedigree of the man McCarthy, who now is in charge of Community Restorative Justice Ireland. Effectively, people, policing the nationalist community over quite a wide scale of Northern Ireland. Let's just play McCarthy's mum when she was appealing for McCarthy's release whenever the IRA had abducted him.
Please let him come home. Let him go. He never done hurt nor harm to anyone. And he's been shot before and he's suffered enough. But the family can't take any more either. Please let him go.
The appeal to the IRA from Cathy McCarthy, the mother of the missing man, came after 4 days without the firm he'd set up 4 years ago when he recovered from serious leg injuries from an IRA kneecapping. Early on Monday morning, police said they had found his car, which had apparently been hijacked. It seems it was being used in connection with an IRA bomb attack, which was aborted. On Monday, a £450 bomb was defused in the estate. The family, along with their doctor, Joe Hendren of the STLP, believe Jim was abducted by the IRA when they took his car and say there's local evidence to back this up. Dr. Hendren, who treated Jim McCarthy for severe disability after the IRA shot him, supports the appeal for his release.
I appeal most sincerely to them to let this poor fellow free, because they've already caused him terrible suffering over many, many years.
So there we have it. We have a man who was named by Mr. Phoenix, Ian Phoenix, a top-ranking RUC special branch policeman, a man who was killed in the Chinook crash. This Mr. McCarthy was named as the abductor of Martin McGartland. And, well, we now see that the IRA, according to McCarthy's mum, according to this video that we could find on the internet, that McCarthy was abducted by the IRA, and this lady was appealing for him to be released from the IRA. And here we have, let's fast forward now to 2022. And here we have this man who was suspected of being an informer, who was shot by the IRA, who was named in Mr. Phoenix's, out of Mr. Phoenix's diaries. That was the special branch guy who lost his life in the Chinook crash. He was named as the man who was filmed abducting Martin McGartland. Yet he has never been charged. And then we ask ourselves the questions, and we're going to go back to the title of this stream. Terrorists, missing money. We've seen that there was a whistleblower that suggested that there was missing money within Community Restorative Justice Ireland, so much so that the PSNI, they have resigned from certainly the go-between. He has resigned from Community Restorative Justice Ireland. The executive have pulled the funding from Community Restorative Justice Ireland. And we try now to understand who that it is that's now in charge of Community Restorative Justice Ireland. It's this man McCarthy, the man that was named by Ian Phoenix in his diaries, taken from his notes, as having been filmed abducting Martin McGartland, an RUC informer who went to Connolly House and who was taken from Connolly House by McCarthy and his friend, according to Ian Phoenix's diaries. So there we have, I don't know what to make of this. I really don't want, that's the evidence as we lay it out before us. Was collusion an illusion? Was Mr. McCarthy an informer? Well, according to his mum, he was abducted by the IRA, and obviously he was re-released. He was shot by the IRA because he wouldn't conform to the dirty protests. It was suggested by people from his area, I may add, that he had been hosing down the dirty protesters and the poo from the walls. We're just putting out the detail of what it is that we see, the evidence that sits in front of us, and then we ask, who's putting the strings of Community Restorative Justice Ireland? Remember, the PSNI just last year on the border area, they were closing down Crossmaglen police station on the recommendations of these people. They were removing the memorials to the RUC people who had been slaughtered by this evil organization to which these men belonged. They were removing the memorials to the people that they killed in the RUC. They were placing those memorials in the back rooms of these stations. And then we ask ourselves the question, who was playing who within the IRA? Who was playing who within this dirty war? Who is continuing to play who? Whenever that we understand that Mr. Phoenix, and from his diaries in a book by Ian Phoenix, well, it names Mr. McCarthy as the man who abducted Martin McGartland. So let's just now go to, another video clip. We'll remove that from our screen. We're nearly at the end of what it is that we're here to do. And there's a lot of questions to be asked here. I like scratching the surface here. With the people here in the background, we have dug very, very deeply. We have known about this for, I'm going to say, and this may surprise someone, but some people, we have known about this for just over a week now. And well, we had to be sure about the evidence. We had to cross-reference a lot of reports, and what fell in our favour was that reports then appeared in the press, filling in the detail of the whistleblower, showing the pedigree of the whistleblower, a member of the wider Bobby Story circle, and this person was whistleblowing about financial irregularities from within this office. She was accused of breaking into the office. She was arrested by the PSNI. And here's another question. Is this the weaponizing of the PSNI? Or was this just merely an accusation made from within this office, suggesting that the whistleblower, the lady who was telling the tale about the financial irregularities, was this just a case of the terrorists, the criminals, those that can't be trusted under any circumstances? Was it that these people were accusing this innocent woman of, well, it's not us that's doing the wrong, you have stolen stuff from this office? And yet the PSNI, without question, went and arrested this whistleblower, took her to a police station, strip searched her, humiliated her, then let her out without any question. And whenever her solicitor had got in touch to say that this lady was a whistleblower involved in showing that there was financial irregularities within a publicly funded organization run by criminals and run by terrorists. And I make no apologies for saying that, because we have the evidence to suggest that these people are unrepentant terrorists. What was it that Michelle O'Neill said last week? Didn't she say that the IRA war was justified, that the things that they done were justified? Didn't we hear Mary Lou McDonald suggest that, well, what did Mary Lou McDonald say? That we will not let them be criminalized. Hang on a wee minute. Is Harry Maguire not a criminal? Well, according to Ian Phoenix's diaries, Mr. McCarthy, the man that is in charge of this organization right now, he has been filmed abducting an IRA informer, and yet he's never been charged. He's never been arrested for it. Then I asked the question, why? We'll leave that for the people on the live chat to try to understand for themselves. People, what type of corruption have we got ourselves involved in? What type of corruption, are the people of Northern Ireland meant to put up with day in, day out, week in, week out, holding our country to ransom, suggesting that if there isn't a border in the North Channel, that they would go back to doing what they do best, that is murdering people, killing people. And if you don't think that I'm telling the truth when I say this, well, what I can do is I can show you the evidence of it. Let's play from another clip. Let's share another clip as we go. So here we have a very, very short clip, and it was taken from Martin McGartland himself. Now, I want for you to pay particular attention to the people that are circled in this little video clip. Let's listen.
Jim McCarthy and Chico Hamilton in the last elections that Sinn Féin had there, whenever they got the 15.5% vote. They were bodyguarding Jerry Adams, and they were in the photograph in the photo call for Sinn Féin on the City Hall, and they were stamping smooth and stuff.
Both men identified by McGartland have prison records. In 1977, Jim McCarthy was sentenced to 5 years for possession of firearms and ammunition. Paul Chico Hamilton was jailed for 12 years in 1979 for the attempted murder of an army major.
So I recap. A man that was shot by the IRA, whenever he conformed with the authorities, what was suggested, and from within his own community, they are suggesting that what he did was that he so much so he colluded, let's just say, with the authorities at the time of the dirty protest, that he was actually hosing down his so-called comrades in the cells. And when he was released from jail, it is suggested that that's the reason why the IRA shot him, and shot him 6 times. Is that what it said? Then, to further go down the line, they suspected him of being an informer. They abducted him. There was a plea from his mother to release him. It then came out in later years from within Ian Phoenix's diaries that they had filmed Jim McCarthy, abducting Martin McGartland, the IRA informer. And whenever they abducted him, well, where is the video evidence of that? Why has this man never been arrested? Who's protecting him? What type of a cesspit of corruption are we involved in? If this man is actually what is suggested from within Ian Phoenix's diaries and Ian Phoenix's book, an abductor working for and on behalf of the IRA, taking Martin McGartland from Connolly House, if this man is exactly what is suggested that he is, who is now in charge of Community Restorative Justice Ireland? Why was it that this woman, this whistleblower associated with Bobby's story, why was she then arrested by the PSNI? Why was she accused of theft, burglary? Why was she taken to a PSNI station? Why was she humiliated? Why was she strip searched? Why was she, well, they gave her a grey tracksuit. Why, whenever a solicitor had contacted the PSNI, why was she released without any real accusations being put to her whilst that she was in custody? This is a subject which will, I'm going to say, this is the goose, this is the gift that will keep on giving. This is something that we at Restore will be following with much, and I mean much, interest. And I'm going to say, people, if you want an insight into the corruption that existed, the collusion that existed, the collusion that still exists, the protection that these terrorists actually have, if you want an insight into that, if you want an insight into the workings within the PSNI with these terrorists, with these unrepentant terrorists, with these murdering scum, with these criminals, with these people who continue to be involved in criminality, if you want an insight into this, I'm suggesting that just like us, that you follow this case and you follow this case to its nth degree. So we'll be coming back periodically. We will be reporting on this case as it goes. We've got to be very careful about what we say. We were quoting from the press. We aren't saying anything about other than what is in the press right now. We're very, very careful not to do the wrong thing, not to prejudice a case or anything else. Suffice to say that the man that is now in charge of this organization, this organization that seemingly has been caught with its fingers in the till of public money, they can't be trusted. Well, the man that's now in charge of them, there's huge questions over this man, and the suggestion from within Ian Phoenix's book that there is video evidence of this man abducting another police informer. You know, I can remember back to a time just a few years ago, whenever the head of naval intelligence would have said that we had them on the ropes, and he was referring to the IRA. There was informers everywhere. We had them on the ropes. Why did we ever let them off the ropes? Well, let me just explain. The person that let them off the ropes was Tony Blair and Tony Blair's government. The person that was most involved in an appeasement process, well, that was after that John Major done the damage, was also Tony Blair. The people that were in the background encouraging that these people should be facilitated, that these people should be handed exactly what they wanted. Doesn't matter about their victims. It doesn't matter about what they've done. It doesn't matter about the heinous murder that they were involved in. It does not matter. that this man, Harry Maguire, was involved in one of the most heinous crimes ever known to man. The two corporals, hemmed in their car, put into a taxi, stripped, beaten, and shot to death in one of the most barbarous crimes that ever happened here in Northern Ireland. It doesn't matter that the man that was convicted for doing that, well, he was the director of this organisation who is now involved in this financial, let's just say, these financial irregularities within this body that is a charity and that is publicly funded. So looking at this thing in its entirety, looking at the entire thing as we look at it in the round, the Executive Office have withdrawn the funding. The PSNI have removed their man from this organisation because they do not want to be tarnished with what's going on from within this place. I'm going to suggest that is it any wonder that this is what you get whenever that you're dealing with criminals? This is what you get whenever you're dealing with an organisation that knows nothing but criminality, skullduggery. Well, yeah, I think you get the picture of what it is that we're saying. Look, what I want you to do, and we're going to go to one more newspaper report before that it is that we finish. And I'm just sorry that we couldn't have made this thing flow from start to finish in the way that I believe that it should have flowed. But there you go. We had IT problems. Who knows? Is it the security services? Is it people that didn't want us actually to broadcast? It was it those people that are interfering with our broadcast this evening? Look, we are being held ransom by these IRA tariffs still today in 2022. There is a completely uneven playing field. These tariffs from 1993 going forward, doesn't matter what they do, when they do it, how they do it, it doesn't matter which law they break, it doesn't matter who they kill, it doesn't matter when they bring their guns out into society. Just last year, shooting over the coffin of Mr. Rooney at the bottom of the Falls Road, D Company of the IRA. It does not matter what these people do. Kevin McGuigan in the Short Strand, that other guy, Jock Davidson, don't let anybody tell you that it is not that conglomerate that are involved in these murders. Wasn't Bobby Story arrested over these murders? You see, these people are involved in criminality. These people are involved in terrorism. These people are terrorizing our society to the point in where that Northern Ireland has now been separated from the rest of the United Kingdom. That you and everyone else has had their democracy removed as a result of, because these people must be facilitated. Why would any self-respecting unionist deal with these people? That begs a question. Why would any self-respecting unionist ever be involved with these criminals whenever they are being appeased to such a great deal, let's just say? We're going to share one more newspaper report, and I think that we need to do this in closing before that we close our stream. Now, let me just share this. Let me read from this, and this gives an insight into the depths to which our own British intelligence services have infiltrated these people, have people working for them from within this crowd, and yet the criminality goes on. They turn a blind eye to murder. They turn a blind eye to the fact that these people left so many victims. And to me, this is completely unacceptable. This is not how to build a society based on stability. This is not how to build a society based on the premise of people coming together, embracing each other, for the bitterness and the hatred of the past. This is not how to do things. If you want an example of how not to create reconciliation, real and true reconciliation, well, this is not how to do it. So let's just read from this newspaper clipping in closing, just to understand the depths to which this society has traveled, has descended, let's just say. So here we go. We're sharing from something, and I'll be back very, very shortly whenever we do this. Bear with me. So reading from what you see in front of you on the screen here, I'm just going to fully enhance that. Here we go. So the leader, his driver, and the driver's handler, chauffeur revealed as an MI5 agent. Now this is from a report which was in The Guardian in 2008, Saturday the 9th of February in 2008. So excuse me as I start to read this. So MI5 took one of Gerry Adams's personal drivers into protective custody yesterday after the man, Roy McShane, was unmasked as a British agent. It is understood that MI5 advised him to leave his West Belfast home after it emerged that an internal IRA investigation found he had been working for the British for more than a decade. Shane was part of a pool of drivers for senior Republican leaders from the time of the IRA's first ceasefire in 1994. He was one of Sinn Féin president's drivers during one of the most politically important periods of the Irish peace process, the run-up to the Good Friday Agreement in 1998. The unmasking of yet another British agent inside the Republican movement in Belfast is an embarrassment for Sinn Féin and an indication of the depths to which the security forces penetrated the organisation in the latter years of the Troubles. A security source said MI5 was so concerned to get the man out so quickly that he had to leave behind him his wife and his family. But Sinn Féin, who said McShane had never been a party member, emphasised he was not under the threat from Republicans. Republican sources said he was not a party to sensitive information and had added that there had been a cloud of suspicion over him for some time. He had recently stopped working as a driver for the party. Alex Maxky from Sinn Féin, Assembly member for South Belfast, said McShane had confessed to his family that he was working for the British security forces, trying to play down McShane's significance. Maxky said, "I see him under no threat from the Republicans. The war is over. We made steps some time ago to remove him from this position as driver, but we didn't have specific evidence against him." He said McShane was safe to return, and the affair had been extremely distressing for his family. The smaller Nationalist Party at Stormont, the SDLP, said last night this latest unmasking of another agent underlined the need for a full inquiry into the role of informers operating in the organisation. So we need to know the full extent of the collusion between Republican and loyalist groups and the security forces, and this comes from the Sinn Féin and the SDLP. And we need to know the full price of such collusion in terms of human life. The latest mole is understood to have worked as a pool of drivers for Adams at the time as the security service were bugging a car which transported Martin McGuinness to and from the negotiations to do with the Belfast Agreement. The late Mo Mowlam, then Northern Ireland Secretary of State, had authorised the bugging of the car driven by IRA intelligence officer Martin Duxer Lynch throughout 1997 to 1998. Lynch's job was to take McGuinness, now Northern Ireland's Deputy First Minister, to the talks with British and Irish ministers, as well as the political parties prior to the Good Friday deal. After the deal, there were further revelations that senior Republicans had been working with the British agents. In December 2005, Dennis Donaldson, then head of Sinn Féin's administration at Stormont, was forced to confess publicly that for more than 2 decades, he had been working for the British security forces, firstly for the RUC Special Branch, and then for the MI5. Now, it is widely suggested that the name of Dennis Donaldson, as he was an agent, was Agent Whittleworth, and we heard that in recent reports. He was shot dead. This was Dennis Donaldson near Glenties in County Donegal in April of 2006. McShane was part of a pool of drivers established in the Republican movement from the time of the IRA secession in 1994. The pool was headed by Mr. Adams' confidant, the late Terence Clark, Now, Terence Cleaky Clark was also, and this is me talking, not reading, he was also convicted of the murder of the two corporals, which was hemmed in at an IRA funeral. They were put into a taxi, they were taken to Casement Park, they were stripped, they were beaten, and they were shot to death in one of the most gruesome murders that the world has ever seen. Among those who McShane worked with, and this is me reading again, on the carpool was Paul Chico Hamilton. Now, Paul Chico Hamilton, who also worked in this carpool, who was driving the Sinn Féin leaders and at the time of the talks to do with the Belfast Agreement. Now, remember, Paul Chico Hamilton was named by Martin McGartland, was also named in the Ian Phoenix's memoirs taken from his diaries, and it was suggested that Paul Chico Hamilton and also this man McCarthy, who now runs the Community Restorative Justice, it was suggested that there was a video of these people, and they were videoed whilst that they were abducting Martin McGartland from the Connolly house whenever Martin McGartland was outed as an informer. So this man, Paul Chico Hamilton, also turned up, and he was in the carpool. So Paul Chico Hamilton, once named as the chief of the IRA section, which carried out the so-called punishment attacks and shootings. Now, this is getting really, really interesting whenever you read this. So it is suggested in the memoirs from Ian Phoenix, taken from his diaries, that Chico Hamilton was abducting the Martin McGartland, and he was part of the IRA Nothing Squad. So Paul Chico Hamilton, once named as chief of the IRA section, which carried so-called punishment attacks and shootings. Now, we also know that the Freddie Scappaticci, that he also was responsible for killing a lot of people. It goes on to say in this document, in this newspaper article by the Guardian, that Passmole's stick knife claimed to be Freddie Scappaticci was one of the most important British agents working inside the IRA. He was head of IRA counterintelligence, whose job it was to smoke out informers, but was in fact a top British spy. Scappaticci has denied he was a spy. Now, this is all taken from the press, and we're just reading, we've just done a bit of research, and we're connecting the dots from what's in the media today. So Dennis Donaldson, confidant of Gerry Adams, who rose up through Republican ranks to run Sinn Féin at Stormont, accused of deliberately deselecting candidates whose loyalty to Adams was in doubt, as Sinn Féin's international spokesman had links with Hezbollah and the PLO, all the time working for both the RUC Special Branch and MI5. Sean O'Callaghan, former IRA Southern Commander, who thwarted a number of bombings, attacks in Britain for both the Garda Síochána and the RUC Special Branch. So here's another one. Kevin Fulton, former British soldier from South Armagh, sent into the IRA by his handlers. Fulton has described how he worked for the security forces while helping to upgrade IRA bomb-making technology. He bugged IRA arms dumps, the homes of South Armagh Republicans, and he deactivated weapons. So Martin McGartland is another agent here, it says here, aka Agent Carl, a special branch informer working inside the IRA's brigade. His book, 50 Dead Men Walking, has now been made into a film. So we're going to go back to StreamYard here. We're going to remove this from the stream, and we're now going to finish what it is that we were here to do. So that I hope that you found that informative. What you'll see at the sides of me there is the Bobby Story funeral, leaving from within Casement Park. And, you know, we fully understand that whenever we see that the GAA, you know, this wonderful community organization, this community organization that some unionists are promoting as a good sporting organizations, we fully understand that these people, the GAA, is synonymous with republicanism, terrorism, the murder, the mayhem, the slaughtering of innocent people, the killing of corporals, which was hemmed in at an IRA funeral, which was put into a taxi, which was taken to Casement Park, this very place, which was stripped. These people were stripped. These people were mutilated, beaten, and savagely shot in one of the most heinous crimes that ever took place here in Northern Ireland. And, you know, for any unionist to be aligning with this GAA, for any unionist to want to facilitate, to accept this organisation as a sporting organisation whenever they continuously add insult to injury to all of those who lost their lives to this evil organisation. To any PSNI, the law enforcement here in Northern Ireland that would want to work with these people whilst they add insult to injury to their victims. To any unionist politician that would want to stand in the same room as these people or breathe the same air. People, what I'm getting at here is that the corruption continues, the criminality continues, the terrorising of our community continues, the holding to ransom of Northern Ireland unionists continues, the facilitating the appeasement of these terrorists, of these criminals continues, the second-class citizenship of people in Northern Ireland who call themselves unionists continues. The removal of our democracy for unionists continues. The border in the Irish Sea continues under the threat of IRA violence. That is too much to continue for my liking. That is why that we need to expose these people. That is why that we need to expose anyone that would seek to want to work with these people. That is why that we need to insist to people from within our community who would provide the illusion of cross-community support to get these people funding, to get these people lottery funding, to place IRA monuments. And I kid you not, this is all happening as we speak. And we uncovered that just a few weeks ago with the Attafoil, what they call the Attafoil train massacre, in where these IRA terrorists, where they blew up 4 people, killing 4 people, killing equine, horses, in where they recently got lottery funding, in where they placed a monument to modern day terrorism, and without the glare of the media here in Northern Ireland. People, I kid you not, I'm in despair. The more that I look at this, the more that I understand that people from within our community needs to take a stand, needs to draw a line, needs to say that enough is enough, that no more will we give, that here we stand, we are going no further, that we want our rights reinstated. To use the terminology from the man that is touted to be the head of the Republican movement at one stage before the Bobby Story took over, to use his terminology, we need to use equality to get our own back on these people. We need to demand equality. We need to demand that we're not being treated as second-class citizens. We need to insist that the body of public services would not be infected by criminality, by these terrorist sympathizers, by unrepentant terrorists, by people who continue to steal public money. Who remembers the what was it they called it, Research Services Ireland Limited, and where £750,000 of public money went missing to this same group, and yet it's brushed under the rug as if it didn't happen. When is enough ever going to be enough? People, we've came to the end of what it is that we wanted to do. I hope that you found that informative. I'm going to ask people that if you support our work, if you would like to help what it is that we do by popping a few pound into our PayPal link, you'll find our PayPal link at the end of on the detail of this stream, or the one that was before. But just in case that you don't see the PayPal link, what I want to do is I'll pop it up again here. Bear with me. So, oh, sorry, I haven't got the PayPal link. Well, seek out our PayPal link. We'll put it on the Restore and all the channels. And if you would like to help our work, please help us expose this criminality, expose this corruption, expose these things that are being brushed under the carpet, these things that your unionist politicians are not telling you about. Help us scratch the surface and help us expose these parasites that are holding our society to ransom and have done, well, ever since this appeasement process began. So I hope that you found that informative. Leave your messages in the live chat with reference what it is that you've just seen. Leave your disgust. Give us a like, give us a love, give us a share. Still tag people into this live chat. Coming soon to this channel, more of the same. Playing us out this evening with something that I think is very, very appropriate because of what it is that you've just seen. We're not going to corrupt this stream anymore. I think the information here is enough for people to scratch into, to try to understand, and to make their own determination as to whether you think that your unionist politicians should be working with these people. Thanks very much for coming along. We're coming up to the end of the calendar here in the marching season, so to speak. Saturday, the Royal Black Preceptory, they would be marching around the country. If you're going to any of those parades, I will be sampling some of those parades myself with some people that are coming from England. We're going to be taking some videos of those parades, and we look forward to joining people here at Restore next week with some more expose. As I say, leave your messages in the live chat, and I'm just looking for a video that I think is very, very appropriate under the circumstance of what it is that you just seen. Playing us out with this little poem written by Jim Werner and myself here at Restore UK, really calling into question how many people had to die for being British in our own land. The Belfast Agreement, it was a disguise. It was built for appeasement, swindle and lies. The peace is a farce. The IRA guns are still there. And London, this is the fact, London is afraid of another bomb scare. And when we get to the end of this, we got to understand, and unless we do this, people, we are over, we are finished. But an army of people must be put together with weapons of words that will remain and abide for another 100 years. Thanks very much for coming along. I hope you enjoyed our stream. Well, thank you, and we'll see you all very, very soon.
I can't help but wonder why so many people, they had to die for being British in our own land, murdered by cowards with their evil hand. The IRA crept back to their bed after leaving so many people dead. A soldier, a cop, a father, a son, a woman, a child, just anyone. But the Unionist people, they did not lie down, fought and defended the Red Hand and the Crown. We stood proud, ready and able. The IRA cried to come to the table. The Belfast Agreement, it was a disguise. It was built for appeasement, swindle and lies. The peace is a farce, the guns are still there, and London's afraid of another bomb scare. Appeasement after appeasement, day after day, provos in government still getting their way, and our two big parties, well, what can I say? They are sitting in Stormont with the IRA, not listening to the people who put them in place. They ask for support, then they lie to your face. A united Unionist party, some say we need, but there's too much corruption, lies and greed. I can't help but wonder why so many people, they had to die for being British in our own land. You can never shake a terrorist's hand. Think of our country, the Red Hand and the Crown. Listen to the people, stop letting us down. Our leaders have blown the chance to make things right. The whole of unionism, I mean the people, we must unite. So we reach out again with offer of partnership. No time for politicians hell-bent on dictatorship. No puppets, no lackeys, our people deserve better. We will not be sucked in with promises in letter. Meaningful and proactive is the only game in town. We long for a day when politicians stop letting us down. You have one more chance at putting things right. But this time we demand that you stick to the fight. A roadmap must be drawn, agreed by everyone. No hierarchy, no pulling rank is exactly what must be done. An army of people must be put together with weapons of words, which will remain and abide forever. United we stand, divided we most definitely fall.